Hello and welcome from the Authors Guild Foundation. This is the third installment of a little mini series we've been doing, media training with Paula Rizzo, and we'll be discussing how to get and keep media attention. Previously with Paula, we've covered giving interviews and producing video content. We did a panel on tips for public speaking. This is part of our broader series, Business Boot Camps for Writers, which is funded in part by the National Endowment for the Arts and by Penguin Random House. So thank you to our sponsors for helping us put on free public programming like this for writers to learn about the business, career, legal aspects of being an author. You can find event recordings and more in the resources section of authorsguild.org. And if you aren't a member, please stop by and check out the site to learn more and contact us if you have questions. The Authors Guild is 13,000 members strong, and we provide contract reviews and other legal advice. We advocate for authors on copyright laws, fair payment, and other critical issues, along with a host of other services and benefits. To the audience, thanks for being here. Thanks for the questions you submitted, helped shape the talk today. We'll cover a lot during this hour, and we'll have a little time at the end for Q&A. Now, of course, we're here with Paula Rizzo to talk about how to get and keep media attention. Paula is an Emmy Award-winning television producer. She's the best-selling author of Listful Thinking and Listful Living, a media training coach, speaker, LinkedIn learning instructor, host of the live stream show Inside Scoop, and creator of the popular online training Media Ready Author. Paula Rizzo, thank you so much for being back with us today.
I am excited because now we've done the whole progression, right? What happens when you're on camera, what happens when you actually get the interview. And now let's step back a little bit and see, how do you actually get the opportunities? And as an author and as someone who's worked in TV for a long time, I've been on both sides of it. So I'm excited to jump in. So I have some good stuff. I know people are asking if there's going to be a recording. Yes, it's being recorded. And away we go. I'm going to share here. And we'll have time for questions at the end. So again, I'm Paula Rizzo. Welcome to Media Training for Authors, how to get and keep media attention. Now that's the important part, how to keep it. You can always be a one-off, but then how do you do it again and again? We'll talk about that. And I am at List Producer at all of the social media spots. So if you want to, tweet or hashtag anything, that's where you'll find me. And here's what we're going to cover today. It's a lot. So get those papers and pens ready. We're going to talk about what the media wants from authors specifically. And I know this because this is what I did. I would always have lots and lots of authors in the studio or do segments with them. So I know what I was looking for as a TV producer. We're also going to talk about the best ways to engage with the media. And here's a spoiler alert. It's the pitch. So how you pitch. And I'm going to go into and show you a very specific example of how to do it. And then how to keep getting asked back. How do you continue this conversation with the media ongoing, because hopefully you'll have other books. Hopefully you'll have other reasons to, be a contributor, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And I'm excited to jump in. So let's get to what the media wants from authors specifically. Okay, so let's just take a step into the newsroom, where I spent nearly 20 years as a TV producer. I worked in local news and national news in New York City, and we get hundreds of pitches a day. I mean, you can't even keep up with the amount of emails that come in, let alone the job that you're actually doing. So if you're doing a live television show, it's very, very difficult to be able to have time to review those pitches. So they better be good. They better really grab your attention really fast, because otherwise there's a million other things in your inbox that you have to take care of. And here's the thing about the media. And I know this because I did this to many, many people. We don't need you until we need you. So we'll ignore you for a very long time, I'm sure. You probably won't hear back if it's a no. And then all of a sudden, maybe out of the blue, and I did this to many, many, many authors and guests, then it's like, oh, I need a cardiologist, or I need somebody who can write talk about how to get your kid to write or something, whatever it is that the story was that warranted. I was like, I think someone pitched me that. Let me look in my email and find it. And then they want you. So you've been asking and asking and asking to be a contributor, and they ignored you. So that's sort of the name of the game, right? It dictates by news of the day. And evergreen stories, so stories that can last whenever, will be killed for breaking news. It's just the way that it goes. It's the news cycle. I had a client, a media training client, who was so excited because her new book about motherhood was out. She was going to be on Good Morning America. And guess what? The Queen died. And that was it. She did not do that segment. And it is what it is. You just have to sort of move on. But, know and understand that the media is always looking for contributors. They're looking in blogs, YouTube, social media, other media. This is important. You never want to be a snob about media. You never want to say, oh, it's just a small blog or it's just a podcast. Nobody's going to listen to it. You never know, because journalists are constantly looking for new stories and new contributors. And this is where they look. And media begets media. Once you get one media hit, you can use that to leverage others going from there. Their contacts, other producers would say, hey, do you have a good expert for this? Or, hey, I need somebody who can talk about this topic. So they're always sharing their contributors. Now, why the media needs authors specifically, because there's tons of experts out there, right? There's lots of people who know a lot of things. I worked in health and wellness for a very, very long time. I worked with lots of doctors, lots of scientists, and people who may not necessarily have had a book. But why the media wants authors specifically is because they always need fresh content. And guess what? All of you are churning out fresh stuff all the time, right? It's the way that the author's life goes. You're always coming up with new content. And guess what? Media needs that. Producers, editors, they all need new things. They need topical ideas, things that are happening right now, that are in vogue, so to speak, that are of the moment, right? You need all of these things. And they're always looking for the breakout star. Now, this for me was always so fun because you're always looking for a contributor who no one else has really used before. Because you'll notice if you watch the news specifically, and I'm going to talk a lot about television and video because that's my background. But all of the things that I'm going to tell you today do apply also to podcasts and radio and magazines and newspapers. But we're always looking for somebody who's going to be the star, the breakout star, because a lot of times you'll see contributors who are on all of the media channels, right? You see them a lot, or the authors who get to do a lot of media. And producers and editors, they want new faces. They want to find somebody new. And once they do, they will use that person again and again. I know because I have done that. And they have a job to do. I think this is the part that gets lost a little bit when we talk about, the media and producers and what they do and how they pick their experts and all of that. At the end of the day, they need to put on a newscast, or they need to publish a magazine or put their article, out there in the world. They have to do a job. They need you. This is not just like, oh, I hope they pick me. They actually really want to connect with you. So I think once you have that mindset switch of saying, hey, actually, I really have something to offer here. I'm able to really help and contribute in a way that maybe you didn't think of before. It's very helpful to members of the media to have new books, to have new authors, and your book doesn't have to be new for you to get media. We'll talk about that too. Now, the rules of engagement are very important. You need to know, how do you pitch? How do you, chat with producers and editors? We're going to talk about that throughout this entire section, but leading with one thing is really important. Okay, so I want you all to remember that if you are an expert in everything that has to do with publishing, or everything that has to do with your book, or everything that has to, whatever, then I don't know what to do with you as a producer. I'm like, well, there's a lot of generalists out there. You have to lead with one thing. And I'll give you some examples of this because I have done it myself too. I started a blog, 10 years ago, listproducer.com, and it's all about lists and to-do lists and how to be more productive. But I lead with lists first. That's how I get in. And then can I talk about productivity tips? Yes. Can I talk about apps? Sure. Whatever it is. But thinking through, how can you just have one lens and look through that lens, at least initially? All right. What do other people see? Now, this is a first impression audit. If someone else were to go to your Instagram or your website or whatever it is, what do they see? What do they think of you? Because here's what's going to happen. If you pitch the media, or if they find you first, because sometimes that happens too, right? Your books are on Amazon and they're on, all of your publishers' websites, and that's where a lot of producers go to find experts. They're going to Google you. They're going to look at your website, and are they going to find something that is the same as what you're pitching, as what you're saying you're an expert in? Because if someone comes to my website and they don't see anything about lists, they're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. She's pitching to be a productivity expert and she doesn't have anything on there. So you want to make sure that you do that check of like, does this look like what it should look like? And why are you the one to call? Why are you the person that they need to call above everybody else? Remember, generalism does not help, because then I can't remember why I would get you instead of someone else. Key here also is to think beyond promotion. This is not just about getting your book out in the media so you can sell books. We'll talk about that too, but this is much bigger than your book. It's bigger than your business. It's bigger than whatever product you have, or if you have services, if you're a nonfiction author. We're going to talk about fiction as well. But what are you trying to change or improve? Why did you even write the book? What are you on a mission to do? How is this actually helpful to others? The answer is never, oh, buy my book, get my book. The media is allergic to that. They hate that answer. They don't want to be, the pitch man for your book. That's just not how it rolls. The media is looking for great stories that their audience needs, that will change their lives, that will make their lives better. And you have something to offer. You're able to say, hey, you know what? This book is actually that. I have all of these things that will help people. Now, an example of this is a man who I met years ago when I was a TV producer. His name is Mo Gaudat. He has a book called Solve for Happy. He has gone on to write other books. He has a great podcast called Slow Mo, which I've been a guest on. And, he is very much about happiness and how he can help people to be happier in the world. And he wrote this book. He's an engineer. So, of course, he created an algorithm for happiness because that's what you would do if you were an engineer, of course, right? It's actually very, very interesting and good read. And, I talked to him about being of service, being able to put what you know out there, be more helpful. And we did a segment and I gave him some tips and tools on how to be even more effective. And this is what he said. He said, 2 days after Paula's coaching, my interview with Channel 4 News in the UK went viral on social media with more than 100 million views. Now, this is that's impressive and awesome, but this is the piece I want you to hone in on. This really opened my eyes to ways I could be even more effective in spreading my message of happiness. Do you see? Spreading his message of happiness, not selling more books, not getting more notoriety for myself, not being more popular, not being more famous, not being a New York Times bestseller. No, spreading my message of happiness. This is what you're all doing. We're all here to spread messages that are in our book. Don't lose sight of that. That is what the media needs. And that is how you will be different from everyone else, because everyone else sees the media as a way to get their stuff on TV and a way to be famous and blah, 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 blah. I know. I dealt with it for years. And those were the contributors that we did not have back. Obviously, I've done this for myself. I have 2 books about productivity, Listful Thinking and Listful Living. I have done all of the things that I'm going to tell you to do. I have tried it on myself, and don't think like, oh, she worked in the media, so you know what? She knows, she knows people. There are no favors in this business, I have to say. I pitched people I worked for years and I got turned down too. So I understand how this works. This is an example of pitching not just the book. This is a segment that I do very regularly. Actually, if you're in New York City, I do a segment with Pix 11 News about monthly. And it's because I pitch them. It's because I come up with ideas again and again. And guess what? The ideas that I give them are not in my book. Listful Living is my new book. They're not in there. These are related topics. And I think this is something that authors get wrong. They think, oh, it has to be about my book. It has to be about the things that are in it. No, it can be much more general. Fiction authors as well. And I'm working on fiction myself too. So I totally understand the differences and the mindset switch. And I have a lot of examples in here for fiction authors too. So I pitched putting a new spin on productivity advice. It was fixing bad advice. That is not in this book, but I still get to be identified as the author of Listful Living. And guess what? Listful Living came out in 2019. It's not a new book. My first book came out in 2015. Not new. And I still regularly do media. You know why? Because I pitch them, because I stay relevant, and because I continue to create content. This is what you need to do as well. But it's not just about the book. It's not just, hey, have my book on. No, it's here are all the things I can give to your audience. Here are the things that I can help with. And I've done this for many, 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 many different types of media. But every pitch is a little different, right? The pitch that I pitched to Brides Magazine is not the same pitch that I pitched to Fast Company. Not the same at all, because their audiences are very different. And that's what you have to keep in mind too. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's very important to know who is reading this. Why do they care? Here's what authors get out of doing media, okay? So I just told you what the media gets, but this is what you get. You get some cachet, I have to say. I mean, I just went to a barbecue this weekend and people were like, oh my gosh, you're always on TV. No, I'm not. I'm on TV like once in a while. And they're like, wow, they think it's so cool. I mean, I won an Emmy Award and no one cares about that. They're just like, wow, that time you were on TV. I've published 2 books. No one cares. But when you're on TV, when you're in the media, people start to think. But guess what? So do your readers. So do your publishers. So do your agents. Everybody gets really excited about this. So it's a good thing to have part of your marketing, right? You get exposure for your book, you get exposure for yourself as an expert, you get exposure for all of that, right? Maybe you start doing other media, maybe you start getting pitched as a speaker if you want to do that. All of these things are helpful. You get attention. It's good. Attention for your book, attention for, let's say you have a side business, right? I do a lot of, obviously I'm a media trainer. That's my main business. I media train authors all day, every day. But when I'm on television, people start to notice me. I've gotten a lot of clients who follow me because of my books. And then they say, oh, I didn't realize you're also a media trainer and you worked in the media for years. Great. It's a good way to get yourself out there for other projects as well. And book sales with an asterisk. Do you see that there? So yes, media can equal book sales, but not in the way you might think. Different types of media will give you better chances of selling more books. Okay. That being said, podcasts, definitely, because people have opted in to listen to that podcast. They like the podcast host. They trust them. If the person says, get Listful Living by Paula Rizzo, they'll go get the book. I've noticed that to be true. If you're on TV, not so much, unless you're a celeb. That's a different story. Celebrities sell books no matter where they go or what they're doing. Okay. But if you're on TV, you should be happy that you have the cachet, the exposure, and the attention. That is what you got from that. Maybe you got a book sale here or there, but TV doesn't sell books in that same way. Advertising, of course, is different, all of those things. But you just have to sort of temper your expectations on what being in the media will mean, right? If you're quoted in a magazine, it's awesome. You get to say, that you're the author of this book. Think about it. Are you going to now go as a consumer and go pick up your phone and say, what was that book again? I have to find it and look it up. Some people will, but not everyone. So a lot of this is exposure for you, cachet, being able to be out there as an expert. I just want you to remember that, because a lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to be on this show and I'm going to sell a zillion books. Not the case, my friends, but you'll get other things. I'm going to take a pause here for any takeaways if you want to throw those in the Q&A box, and also any Q&As that you have, you can stick them in there. I'm going to save questions for the end. But if there's any takeaways in the recent things that I've just said, I would love to hear those in that Q&A box. Every book has a message. Anthea, yes. She says she was researched. She or he, sorry, says that they were recently on a podcast, and it makes all the difference in getting viewers in front of your story and your book. Yes, it's true. Everybody has this story to tell. All right, let's move on to best ways to engage with the media, because there are some golden rules. Now, I want you to put yourself in the media's shoes, right? Remember, I told you there's a lot going on in that newsroom. They have a job to do. And who they care about is their audience. And that audience matters above all else. You know why? Because they're the ones who are watching. They're the ones who the advertisers are interested in. And so you can know who the audience is by watching the commercials. So if you watch commercials, you will see exactly who the target is of that TV show. Same thing for magazines. As you're going through them, you'll see that and you'll know. Okay. Get to know the show. So that means you have to watch it. A lot of times people say to me, oh, I want to be on TV, but I never watch any of these shows. Then how the heck are you going to pitch them? You won't be able to. And get to know the show, get to know the anchor. Now, a lot of times when I was doing health news, I worked with a doctor who was very fun and very fun loving. And he had a lot of like favorite things that he would like to do, like wine segments. And, a lot of the publicists and the experts and the authors got to know him. And so they would pitch us ideas that he would like. Right. So maybe it wasn't exactly the types of segments we would do, but we knew that he would love it. So we would do those. You have to get to know these things and be open to collaborating. This is another mistake that I see with especially new authors, because they think, oh, no, well, I pitched this idea. This is the only idea that I want to do. The media will see what you send, right? A producer will see it and say, hey, that's a cool idea, but could you talk about this? Because that's related. And so often people say, no, I only want to talk about what I want to talk about. And then guess what? They never ask you back, and they moved on to find somebody else who's going to do that other story with them. So be mindful of that, because if you are not willing to be flexible, a lot of times the media person will just move on, and that will be that. Unleash your expertise. Look at the news through your professional lens. Now, after watching this webinar, I want you to consume media a little bit differently. All right, you're going to be watching TV, you're going to be reading the news or whatever it is and saying, how does this count towards what I do, right? What is it that I think professionally as a writer, as an expert in whatever your book is in? What would I do here? And I'm gonna show you some examples of this. But pitching angles that you haven't seen done. Now, this is true and untrue, because if you've ever read a magazine, especially women's magazine or, Fast Company or whatever, every month it's the same thing, right? It's always for women's magazines, how to burn belly fat. I mean, over and over and over. So they're looking for new ideas that haven't been done before, but that they know their audience will love. Okay. So that's the caveat there. Share your unique perspective and your opinion. This is it. Write down opinion and circle it, because this is the differentiator. So often people want to go on and just say, be like, oh, right, yeah, I'll talk about whatever and I'll agree with everybody. We want to know what your opinion is as a member of the media. We want somebody who can, kick the tires on something a little bit. So for instance, I had an expert who used to, her specialty is stress relief, right? And she would pitch why stress is actually good for you. Interesting. That was not just her opinion. There's a lot of science behind that, but it was good for her to be able to pitch that interesting little twist. And I always kept her in mind. The idea here, when all else fails, just be of service. How can you be helpful? Remember Mo, how could you be helpful? How can you be of service? How can what you do help someone else? And this goes also for fiction writers too, in so many ways, because you can be, you can be an expert in the craft of writing, how to write a book, of course, right? There's so many steps to it. I now know, now that I'm trying fiction, it's a totally different animal. And also in the themes of your book. So we'll talk about that. But how could you be of service to people? Always important. Pitch like a producer. So producers, again, are thinking about, why does the producer care? You're pitching me this. Why do I care about this? And sometimes when I was a producer, people would pitch me things that they knew I personally was interested in. I did a lot of natural medicine stories because I actually was very interested in it. So guess what? I would go to bat for those stories in our editorial meetings. I would say, I think this is important. And people knew that. Experts who would pitch me things, they said, you know what, Paula's the one to pitch if you want a natural medicine story, because she's more invested in it. She's interested in it. She'll definitely try to get that segment done. So sometimes you have to get to know the writer or the producer a little bit, understanding, how many times have I said this? Why does their audience care? This is all that matters with a pitch. Why does their audience care? Not why do you care? Why does the audience care? Why now? Why is this topical? Why is this something that we should be doing something on? And the answer to this is not because I have a new book on it. Not the answer. Sorry, everybody. Why you and why not a different author? Because in the same way that there's a lot of similar stories in the media, there's a lot of similar books out in the world, right? Of course. How is this different than everything else we have seen? How's it different? And part of that is because you're different, because you have your own spin on it. You're a different person than another author. Okay, so we're going to talk about the different types of pitches for different type of media. Okay, so to do print media, so let's say it's a magazine or a newspaper, you can get a byline where you're writing and contributing. You're the one writing the article. You can do an op-ed, which people have asked questions about op-eds and payments for op-eds. For the most part, op-eds do not pay, except if you are writing an op-ed for a company. That company will pay you, but very infrequently will you get paid by the media. An expert interview. You'll be interviewed because you can talk about 5 new apps for to-dos, something like that, right? So you have a quote in an article versus you writing the entire thing yourself. And that is an easier way to get in. Okay. A lot of times people, especially authors, think, oh, I'll just write it. Let me just write it. I'll get the byline. I'll be the contributor. It's a little bit of a harder sell in the beginning because the producer or the editor doesn't know you. right? It's good sometimes when you do excerpts of your book, that's good. But for continuing to be a contributor, sometimes they like to interview you first as an expert. And then from there, then you can sort of pitch and say, hey, I could write a whole article on this, or I could do, I found that actually is an easier way in. For radio and podcasts, of course, to be a guest on a segment, sometimes a co-host, that does not come right away. That is an extra thing you do later. Okay. So that's not like, hey, I'm going to pitch you right away and I want to be your co-host. They're going to be like, who is this? What are they thinking? Nope. This is not okay. I don't know you. So you want to go in easy first as a guest, maybe a few times, and then from there. Now, TV and video, which is where we're going to spend most of our time, in studio is a way to do that. And in studio is both in studio and also now remote, right? The pandemic has changed everything. Now it's a great equalizer in many ways as far as media goes, because you don't have to be in New York or LA or Chicago to do the big shows. You can a lot of times do it remotely. And most people have set up some great setups to be able to do that. I teach this quite often to authors and experts on how to make sure that your home studio looks great. A package, which is 1 to 3 minutes of a segment. There will be sound bites in there. And then a do-it-yourself soundbite. Now, this is something that I used to do as a producer years and years and years ago before anybody else was doing this. I'm like patting myself on the back and also, showing my age, because we would send contributors flip cameras. Do you remember the flip cameras? The little flip. And we would say, we would train them and say, here's how you set up your shot. And they would do their own sound bites. So if we had a segment and we're like, oh, we need, a doctor to talk about whatever, what's the best way to incorporate greens into your diet? Who knows, whatever. And then they would shoot it themselves. But this is where the world has gone now. Now you can write your own sound bites and you can do your own sound bites. You can produce your own videos. You can put them on Instagram. You can put them all over the world. Like, it's amazing what you can do. And I want to make sure that you're harnessing that power. And I have a little resource for you that I think will help to be able to speak in sound bites, because you want to be thinking about your book in a way that's sound bite friendly. So if you go to paularizzo.com/10Q, I have a freebie there for you, both for fiction and nonfiction authors, where it's the 10 questions every author needs to answer. And it's questions you'd be asked, let's say, when you're doing a speaking engagement, in a panel, when you're doing a book signing, when you're being interviewed by the media, so that you have those quick answers ready to go, so that you sound intelligent and ready to answer any questions that come your way. It's important to practice, because so often we think, oh, I'll be fine, just ask me. Just the other day, someone asked me, oh, you're writing fiction? What's the book about? And I was like, oh, I train people to do this all day, every day. And it's so hard to do for yourself. So I understand the struggle here. And that's why I put together this freebie for you at paularizzo.com/10Q. You can check that out. So here's some pitch tips. When we're pitching video, you have to think visually. Okay. And that's why I want you to master your sound bites too, because you will be on camera. But what are the elements of your book, even if it's fiction, that could be visual, that could make people say, oh, I can learn in a different way? Start thinking through that. Think about, like, what if you were to teach somebody who wasn't going to read an article? They needed to see what the book is about. What would you show? What are the elements there? And I'll show you many examples of this. Think fast. I mean, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, like, it's fast. Video is very fast. Think about tabletops and demos. Okay, so the best people who do this are morning shows. You say they do this all day, every day. Start watching a couple morning shows and see what they do, how they do this. It's great for cooking, great for whatever, those types of things that you can show an experience, a transformation before and after. Great for nonfiction, right? I'm going to give you an example of one that I did. This is one of the very first TV appearances I ever did for the Better Show. May it rest in peace. It is no longer on television, but I pitched a tabletop for my book. At the time, it was Listful Thinking, my first book, which you can see a grainy photo of over there on the right. And the segment was Detoxing Your To-Do List. Now, this segment, Detox Your To-Do List, was something I was interviewed for already in Dr. Oz magazine. And I thought, you know what? I could make this a visual segment and I could pitch it for TV. And that's what I did. So if you see there on the left, I have my vision board. So I talked about different kinds of lists. I have list making paper there, how you can set up your to-do list. And then I also reached out to a bunch of companies that made, those notebooks that are digital, like you can write on them and then they digitize your notes. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, I want to talk about ways that you can detox your to-do list and use digital tools. This was a long time ago, so this was not, a new concept at the time. It was pretty new. I mean, it wasn't an old concept like now we're like, oh, everybody's using their phones for everything. This was a very new concept at the time. So it was very timely. And this is, a segment about a to-do list that I basically was able to show products for and show different ways for you to be able to optimize your list making and detox your to-do list with different products. None of those, maybe the vision board, but none of those other things are actually in my book, right? I'm an expert in this. It doesn't matter that those things were not in the book. Okay, so that's an example there. I'm going to show you some other examples from other people as well. Okay, so this was someone, Jessamine Stanley. I did a segment with her many, many, many years ago when this book first came out, Everybody Yoga. And I just want to give you some examples of what it could be. Like, what could she have pitched with a book like this, right? Nonfiction book about body positivity. In the studio, we could, of course, talk about new trends in yoga. She's a yoga instructor, right? A segment on body positivity. A panel member on how to let go of fear. Do you see, these things are in her book, but it's not the only thing the book is about. So you need to sort of pull apart the book and see what else is in here. What are the themes? What are the things I could talk about? These would make great in-studio segments. When you're pitching in studio segments, you want to think about what's the video, right? What's the visual element here? What video clips? What are your talking points? Again, talking points and sound bites go hand in hand. So you want to make sure that you have that lockdown, that you know exactly what you're going to say, and you have a great headline point for everything that you're going to talk about. Maybe you have a tabletop. Maybe you're able to show different things. This is visual, remember, in studio. Or you could pitch a package. So package is something that's about 1 to 3 minutes, as I said, and it's usually where the reporter or the producer will go. This is a segment that I did many, many years ago. It was, we went to Jessamine's studio and she taught yoga and we interviewed her, and it was a great little short segment on boosting body image through yoga. Okay, so a lot of times you have to be thinking through this. Producers will do this for you, obviously, because they'll be able to say, oh, this will be a better segment like this, or it'll be a better segment like that. But I want you to start thinking about it too, so that you know the game, so that you know what producers are already thinking, that they're like, hey, this is a great story, but how am I going to show it? What would I show? So you start thinking about it. This is another example. This is a fiction book. And Kelly DeVoe is someone who I media trained when this book, Fat Girl on a Plane, came out. And this is also about body positivity and also about, being a larger size and what that means through fiction. Now, she was also doing many of the same segments that I just showed you for Jessamine, right? She was talking about letting go of fear. She was talking about body positivity. She wasn't talking about yoga, but she was talking about fiction and how to write it, how to process your feelings, how to take something that had happened to you, this was true, it happened to her, and turn that into fiction. So you can do this for fiction or nonfiction. And this is a great example of how to do it for both, for nonfiction or for fiction. Now, Jodi Picoult, you all know her. You all love her. She's super famous. I know you're all saying, but she's famous. Yes, but she wasn't always famous. And this is a media hit that she had done. I think this book came out in 2018. Now she's talking a lot about book bannings and very topical things and all of that. But her books, which are all fiction, are very topical. They're of the moment. This was about an abortion debate, right? A lot of her books are about school shootings, where she has things about, things that could be used in the media. Look at your own books, fiction authors, and say, what are those themes that I could be talking about? Not that you're going to become an expert in that, but you're looking at the culture of this. Why is this happening? Why are we talking about this? How did I do this research? That is what she is very good at doing. This is another author of this is a fiction book, Gretchen Anthony. I media trained her when this book came out, and it's fiction. And she did a lot of media for this book because her publicists pitched an element of this book so smartly. This book, at the crux of the story, was the Christmas letter. Do you know the Christmas letter, when someone writes a, braggy Christmas letter about how fabulous their family is and how wonderful their year was and how great everything is, and they send it. And that is what the theme of this book was. So they would pitch Gretchen as someone to talk about the Christmas letter. Where did it come from? How did this start? What are good ways to write it? What are good ways to not write it? And so this was a fiction book that we took a nonfiction pitch for. So you can definitely do this. You just have to sort of think through. Now I've given you these examples, and it makes it a little bit easier to think about, how could I do this? So now that I've given you that example, if you have any takeaways, I'd love to hear those in the Q&A, below. And then we're going to be talking about how to get asked back, and that is all about the pitch. Okay, so as you write down your takeaways, I'm going to move it along so we make sure we get questions in, because I know there's a lot of questions. Okay, keep getting asked back. Very important. How to become a go-to author. Number one, say yes. So often people say no. They say, I'm not ready. Oh, I don't know my sound bites. I'm not a media ready author yet. I don't know what to do. And it breaks my heart. You have to say yes, because if you say no, that media outlet has moved on. They found someone else, and you will never be called back. I guarantee it, because I know, because I did it. Because remember, producers and editors have a job to do, and that job is to fill that segment. And if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. So they have moved on. Show up soundbite ready, right? You want to make sure you have your sound bites ready, that they're going to pre-interview you. So once they think, for TV, they think that you might be a fit. They want to talk to you on the phone. They want to make sure that you can do this. And so you want to make sure that you perform, that if they ask a question, you are able to really speak in sound bites and be able to get the messages across in a fast and easy way. And always pitching what they need, not what you need. Remember, it's what they need, what their audience needs. So we're going to roll through some common pitch problems, and then I'm going to show you how to create a pitch. So a lot of times the pitch problem is the subject line, because remember, there's not a lot of time to look. So you really have to grab attention in the beginning. I've seen, these are all of subject lines that I have gotten as a journalist. Can I pitch you? Oh, the worst. Don't ask a journalist a question when the answer could be no. Literally, because they'll be like, nope, and they'll just keep moving on to the next thing. Are you interested in this? Also, interested in what? Give them a reason to be. What are we talking about? This does not do anything for anyone. Expert available. There are about a zillion experts in their inbox right now. Tell us more. Tell us why. Tell us what's going on. Grab it. Think of it as like a headline. I've gotten this many, many times. What are you working on? I mean, don't give me more work. I get it. You're trying to engage with them. You're trying to they don't have time. They don't have time for that. Another big pitch problem is no video clips, especially, if you're pitching video, if you're pitching TV or, a live stream show or something, you have to show videos. Absolutely 100%. Unclear pitches. Now this is, if you're multitasking and doing something else, come on back, because this is everything you need to know about pitching and how to do it. Unclear pitches are always a no. They don't have time to figure out what you meant. If it doesn't make sense right away, they have moved on to something else. Okay, so first off, what is a pitch? I know this is something that I've been talking about since the beginning of this segment, but it's an email typically that a media gatekeeper will receive from you that explains what and how you can contribute to their outlet. Okay, so how you can contribute. And mostly it is an email. Don't really use social media too much. Twitter is good for finding stories. I actually have been identified as an expert from Twitter once before. CBS News reached out to me because I tweeted something about teleprompters. And so a reporter interviewed me about whether or not I thought the presidential candidates were using teleprompters for some of their answers. So you can be found that way, but I wouldn't pitch necessarily that way. The elements of the pitch. Okay, this is very important. There are 3 elements to a pitch. First is the hook. So the hook is why now? Why is this important? The twist is how is this different than everything else that I have heard about this topic? And then the last element is the takeaway. What is the takeaway? What is it that the audience will now do differently now that they've heard your segment, read your book, whatever it is, right? The hook, the twist, and the takeaway. Why now? What's different about it? And what am I going to do about it? What do I do differently? And I will show you how to do this. Those are those three elements. I always keep that in my mind when I'm pitching because it's very important. It's the thing that the producers are looking for and editors as well. Now, before you freak out and say, oh, I don't know what to pitch, you do. You have blog posts, you have social media posts, you have podcasts, you have videos, you have other media interviews, maybe. You have your book. You have a whole bunch of stuff that you could be pitching. Okay, so you can take all of that and repurpose that content into a pitch. The 4 steps to writing a compelling pitch is number 1, to research the outlets. Remember I said earlier that a lot of people want to do TV, but don't actually watch TV? Well, you're going to have to. You're going to have to research those outlets. You're going to have to watch it. You're going to have to read it. You're going to have to see what do they do, because they're not going to divert from that. They're very much going to stay in their lane and continue to produce that sort of thing. Brainstorm ideas. Everything counts. Just write it down, get it out of your head, look at some of the blog posts you've written or you've done in the past. Just put it all out there. And then you write an awesome pitch. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So this is an example from someone who, her name is Tracy McCubbin, and I've known her for years. She was pitched to me as a professional organizer when I was a TV producer. We became friends. I interviewed her in my book, Listful Thinking, and she has many books that she is also has out in the world. I had her on as a guest on my live stream show, Inside Scoop, recently. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to use her as an example. This is not a real pitch. I completely made this up myself. But I thought, okay, she's a new author of this book, Make Space for Happiness. And I'm going to come up with a pitch for this. So here is how I would do it. And I will show you the elements of each element bit by bit. All right. So first element, subject line. It does not say, can I pitch you? It says, ditch your ex's stuff this Valentine's Day. A little interesting, isn't it? Dear Paula, I made myself also the producer. Hope you're doing great. I loved your recent segment on winter wardrobe decluttering. See, this is a good way to get in with the media too, because you want to say, hey, I've watched something or I read something that you recently did that is related to what I'm about to pitch you. And I know you do these types of segments. So it's important to call that out if you have that example. Did you know that most breakups happen within 2 weeks of Valentine's Day? That's according to the official Journal of the International Society of the Study of Individual Differences. That's a real thing. I looked it up. I found a study. It's always good to hook something here that is timely, that is a study. Journalists love that. They love stats, and then link to it, right? There's a link there. Since it won't be all roses and candy hearts for everyone, why not focus on how to move forward after a breakup and reorganize your space for happiness? Then we go on to say who she is. Do you see how I structured this? It's not that we started with her first. We started with the story first, and then we get to her. My name is Tracy McCubbin. I'm a professional organizer in LA, the author of the new book, blah, blah, blah. I put source books, October 2022 there, because sometimes some producers are snobby still about self-published books, about, if you have a big publisher, sometimes it's good to put it in there. Not always, but I would stick it in there. Also have a link out to the book so that they can see what the book is about. And then some ideas. I'd love to share some tips with your viewers to get their lives and space on track after a breakup, including the most important item to get rid of first. Do you see all of these are very interesting? How to decide who keeps what in 2 minutes. Very specific. That could be a magazine article. What time is the best to clean out your space? And how to reorganize your new space for happiness. See, all of those topics there that I listed could be their own thing. And think in headlines, because they're sometimes thinking, okay, what's the headline? And then we'll figure out what the story is after that. And then lastly, here is a clip of a recent appearance that I did on KTLA News. On KTLA News, and see how I bolded certain things about decluttering in the new year. And this is a video on how to declutter in 5 minutes on my Instagram account that has gotten 80,000 views. So if you've not done traditional media before, it's okay. You can show your own videos as well. And if there's been a lot of views, say that. I've also regularly been featured on blah, 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 blah. Okay, so she's done a lot of things, right? Looking forward to hearing from you. All the best. Okay, So this pitch has all of the elements, since I wrote it that way. It has the hook. The hook is Valentine's Day. Why now? Why are we doing this now? Because it's Valentine's Day. The twist is how to move forward after a breakup, because no one's talking about breakups on Valentine's Day. They're talking about love and everybody getting together. So this is different. This is counterintuitive. This is what you want, something a little bit different. The takeaway. These are things that could be the elements that the audience will take away, right? And that's those three things. The pitch has to have these things. Double check the name and the outlet. I can't tell you how many times people pitched me the wrong show and the wrong person and the wrong everything. And it really just makes people mad. It really upsets producers. Make sure you have clear, specific subject line, right? I see somebody saying, shouldn't it say pitch first? No, it doesn't need to say pitch first. Everything a journalist is getting is a pitch. They know what you're doing. They totally understand what the game is here. It should take about 15 seconds to skim and get. Okay, so that's why I underlined certain things. That's why I bolded some, right? You want to make it very visually easy to read, not block text. You want to have bullet points in there. It should be short, concise, and clear. You should have a little bio about who you are, very, very briefly. Your website, your book title should be in there. And of course, you should have video clips. Even if you're not pitching for TV now, think about it. Podcasts, almost every podcast also has a video element to it as well. So if you have something like that, I think it's very helpful to do that. Now, I have a couple of bonus tidbits here for you that I want to make sure to get to. Maybe reasons you didn't hear back, because this happens a lot. You did all of those things. The pitch was awesome, and you still didn't hear back. It happens to me, too. I just pitched somebody who's ignoring me right now. They're overwhelmed. It's the way that it works in media. It wasn't a fit. It was just a no, or they just did something like that. They didn't understand it. They're never going to have time to go back to you and tell you this, because they're just too busy and they're moving on to something else. You're just another author. Maybe that pitch wasn't exactly the clearest, and they already have an author who wrote a book that was similar. It happens. It's okay. And other things you'll never know. The host hates doing those types of segments. You never know. That used to happen to us. We couldn't do certain things because, our anchor didn't like that story or whatever it was. You just never know. So don't take it personally. This happens to everyone. You just have to keep trying. The way to connect with them is through LinkedIn. I always love LinkedIn as a producer. Not all of them are on it, but I would often connect with experts and with authors and see what they were posting, because that would often give me, a producer, an idea and say, that's a good idea. Let me reach out to that person and see if we can do something on that. And that's also happened to me too. I posted something about, it was like productivity tips. I forget what it was, like for kids or something like that. It was just like a post that I had written literally in like 2017. And a media outlet reached out to me and said, we want to do this. And I was like, all right, that's an old story, but I don't care. It's fine. Twitter, lots of journalists on Twitter, always on Twitter. That's where they get all of their information. They're looking at fast things that are happening right now of the moment. Look at the bylines, look at the bios. They want to be found. You are able to see, for the most part, if this is for print, you're going to see who wrote it. It's harder for video because there's not a place to show who the producer is. But your contacts too, other authors, other people that you are connected with will hopefully be able to help you. A goal is a response. The goal is a response. A conversation. So you have to follow up, always follow up. Never think, they didn't like it the first time. You should absolutely follow up. Give it, 3, 4, 5 days, follow up and repitch in the beginning. So don't just say, hey, what did you think of the below? That gives them work to do. Literally repitch, go back up and say, hey, was wondering what you thought about this topic, and then repitch it maybe differently or a little bit more concise, whatever it is. Start a conversation. That's what you want. You want them to come back to you and say, hey, this didn't work, or, it'd be better if you could talk about this. That's what you want. You want to make a connection and to always link in with that producer. You never know where that person will go. They might move to a different outlet. So that email address that now you have for them could be old. That's why I like LinkedIn and Twitter, because you can connect with them and follow them wherever they are. Always be a resource. Remember, this is to be of service. This is to be helpful to them. So you want to always be a resource. If you see a segment or you see something that would be interesting to them that you're not the best expert to speak about, you could reach out to them. You could say, hey, you know, I saw this. I thought you would be interested in it. People used to do that with me all the time. And I found that very endearing because they realized I was a person with a job who had a thing to do, and they were helping me to get my things done at the end of the day. And create your own content. This is probably the most important piece of this, right? So often people will say, oh, I pitched this to the media and I didn't hear back, or there was a HARO request about whatever, and I wrote up this whole thing and they didn't even get back to me. Help a reporter out. That's HARO, if you haven't heard of it. And I always say, so do it yourself. Create your own content. Why not just do a video of you giving those 3 tips that you were going to give to that producer or to that editor? Do it yourself. Think about that, right? How are you out in the world showing yourself as an expert? You definitely want to do that. And, you know, of course, I want to talk about takeaways. So if you have any takeaways that you want to put into the Q&A box, please do that, and your questions, because I'm going to take those in just a moment. But I do hope that each of you have started to think of media a little bit differently, to think of the pitch a little bit differently, and what you do. And listen, this class was very much about how to get the opportunity, right? And then what do you do once you get it, right? So it's about speaking in sound bites. So I have this resource for you. Again, it's paularizzo.com/10Q, the 10 questions every author needs to answer, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And I work with both. I work with authors of all genres. And you do need to be able to speak in sound bites. That's part of the game here, because if you do that, then you're going to be able to get media attention, not only for this book, but for your follow-up books or for whatever projects that you're working on. And just a quick second here, you know, this is my 3rd webinar that I've done for the Authors Guild. I've been very happy and excited to do this. You know, I created a course. It's called Media Ready Author, where I do help authors to be able to speak in sound bites, to set up their virtual studio, and to sell more books. So if anyone is interested in that, if you go to MediaReadyAuthor.com, I would love to help you on your journey. And some of you I already have helped because you found me through the other webinars, and I appreciate that very much, because I know this is not easy to do it for yourself. I understand. I'm going through this myself as a fiction author now, being able to say, oh gosh, what is this book about? How do I talk about this? So once you want to be able to get these opportunities, you want to be able to keep them, and you want to be able to produce your own content, because that is how you show the media that you can do this, that you're able to be an author that they want to continue to book. And think about it. I mean, I haven't had a new book since 2019, and I still do media regularly. So the fact that people often say, oh, I'll do media when my book comes out, it's too late. You need to be doing it before. You need to continue that conversation and keep that conversation going, so that when the next book comes out, all of those producers and editors know you and love you, and it's much easier to get booked again, right? So like when I had my first book, I did tons and tons of media, and then I continued to do media. I didn't know I was going to write a second book. Then I wrote a second book, and I went back to all of those people and I said, hey, remember me? I have another book, and here it is. And I was able to do it again. And so this is part of your ongoing, long-term, long game perspective. And I would love to help any of you on the journey, because I understand it from every single angle. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'm going to take questions now. So please do leave those below. I know Johnny's been looking at those. So I will toss it to you.
Great, thank you, thank you. There's so much great information. First of all, someone asked how you pitched this to the Authors Guild, and that's sort of like something you said earlier. You met our VP of programs in person at a conference at Book Expo.
Book Expo
years
America,
ago,
yes.
But it was like 3-4 years before we got back in touch with you.
You're right, exactly. So that's what happens. You just want to, you know, make an impression, hopefully.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we did get a lot of questions from fiction writers and a few poets. So do they need to tie the themes of their books to something in the news, in the real world, and just kind of adjust this for their purposes? Or is there some other way to get the media interested in featuring a fiction writer?
Yeah, I mean, it is very much about thinking through the themes. Also, I would pay a lot of attention to the questions that you get from book signings. When you get questions from people, that's always perking up my ears to say, this resonated with people, or this wasn't clear, or this is something people want more information about. How can I use that maybe as a pitch? How can I use that as something that might be helpful? So I would do that. And I would also start thinking about, stepping back away from the plot of the book and thinking about yourself as the expert. You have so much expertise on how to write a book, how to pitch, how to find an agent, how to, all of these things that you've already done, that a lot of people need this information. So thinking about those pieces as well is a good way for you to sort of start the process.
Many people are wondering how to go about choosing who to approach and getting email addresses.
Mm-hmm. It's much easier now than it used to be. It used to be that they were hidden away, but now, most of the time the journalists want to be found. They have a job to do, as I said. So they want to be found. They want you to pitch them. So you can see a lot of times on the websites, they will have bios. LinkedIn is a great place to look. If you can't find the information there, literally just call the station. I know that's so weird and people don't pick up the phone anymore. But really, if you were to call your local TV station, say, hey, who is the producer of such and such show? I'd like to send them, a pitch. They will give it to you. And if they don't give it to you, call back in an hour and a half or 2 hours, and somebody else will be answering the phone, and then they will give it to you. But you really have to sort of put on your own journalist hat here and try and find it. Press releases are also a good way to find information. You can sort of see, who sometimes, if you're looking for people's email addresses, you could figure out, like, is it first name dot last name at the name of the company or whatever. It's a good kind of way to navigate through that.
Yes, if it bounces back, there's no harm,
Exactly.
Could you define and describe a good soundbite?
Yes. So a soundbite is a portion of an interview that is particularly catchy and grabby. It is the piece that really gets people. It's what they quote. It's what journalists quote, right? So when you're reading quotes, it's because they've done a very long conversation with someone and they have picked these sound bites out. If you're reading an article in TV and video, you have to do that yourself because it's often live. And so you need to really get to the point. So the way that I teach it in Media Ready Author and with all of my one-on-one clients is that you need sort of like a headline point, right? Right out of the gate, have a really fast headline that you say that gets me to the point. And then from there, you can continue talking about other things. But oftentimes, especially writers, will get to the point much later on in the soundbite. And I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to bury the lead. I want you to bring that lead right up to the top. And it takes a little bit of practice, but it is something that if you can do that, journalists will love you and they will book you again and again.
A few people are wondering about the timing of when to pitch. What if your book isn't out yet? Should you wait until it's already available for sale, or?
I always say if you're waiting for your book to be out, it's too late. So I understand that a lot of times publishers don't want you to do things beforehand because they think, oh, we're going to scoop our own story, sort of, right? Oh, then people won't want to have you back. I disagree. I think you need to start as soon as you can. I was pitching media when I had a blog. I didn't even have a book. I made myself an expert on list making. You know what I mean? Like, you can make yourself an expert on anything. And I was doing that because I knew it was important to be able to position myself as an expert and also to give myself the time to learn how to do this, right? I was behind the scenes. I wasn't on camera. I wasn't doing all these things. So I needed to be able to start honing my own craft, to be able to speak in sound bites, to be able to pitch, you want to be able to do those things because you're not going to get the biggest opportunities right in the beginning. So you want to have sort of like the smaller opportunities where you can work out your material, you could feel really confident, you can start working on your sound bites. So then when the time comes, when the book is out, you're ready to go. You know exactly what you're going to say. You feel much more confident. And those producers and editors already know you because you were really helpful and really great before. And now they definitely want to have you because now you have a book. Great. We'll have you back on.
That makes sense. What about timely events, holidays, anniversaries, like the Valentine's example you used? How far in advance of a date should one be pitching?
So it depends on the outlet, right? So for magazines, you do have to pitch well in advance. And a lot of times you can go on the website and the way that you can do this, they give advertisers so much information. So if you go, you can see what what each of the magazine, what they'll be for each month, right? So there's a theme. And if you go and you look to the advertising section of the website, there's usually a PDF that says, January, we're doing love, and February, we're doing this, whatever it is, so that you can sort of see when are they closing that magazine. Because they'll say those pitches have to be in, or those ads have to be in by July or something like that. So you'll be able to see. It's a sneaky way around it, That's for magazines. For TV, usually these things happen pretty fast. So I'd say, a week, maybe 2 weeks before. It also depends on the outlet, depends on, is it live? Is it pre-taped? Do they do things well in advance? Some of those things you're not going to know. For podcasts, for instance, usually podcasts are produced well in advance, a month, 2 months before, something like that. So, you do need to get to know the outlet. It's different for all of them.
Okay. What about working with publicists? Is it beneficial to have someone pitch on your behalf?
Yes. I mean, it is always good to have someone who knows the media, who knows how to pitch, who has the relationships. And I will say, as a TV producer for years, I've worked with so many great publicists who I really trusted. And I knew that they knew what my audience wanted. And so they would never send me off topic pitches. Everything they would send me was quality. That did not always happen. There were a lot of publicists who do not do that, who are not great. I mean, that's in every field, right? And who would pitch no matter what, if it was something that would not work. So you never, I think it's good to have an advocate, to have someone who knows what to do, but you have to be a good partner. You have to understand this yourself. You have to come up with great ideas. You have to be able to help them pitch your book in the best possible way. You have to be ready. You have to be, soundbite ready and media ready and all of that, so that when they pitch you, they want to pitch you to their good contacts because they know you're going to do a great job. That's the thing. It's all about relationships, really, with PR. And sometimes you will get a publicist with your publisher, and it's very much about, that partnership. They'll want to know, who do you know in the industry? Who can we pitch? Who can you pitch on your own? Not to say that you have to have a publicist. You don't. I've done one book without a publicist, one book with a publicist, and I was able to do a lot of this myself as well because I had been doing it over a long period of time. I had built those relationships so people knew who I was when I would pitch them. So, it's important to really use that relationship in the best possible way and use it to your advantage.
Mm-hmm. Are traditional press releases a factor in any of this? Are they good format?
I mean, I would argue that press releases were dead 10 years ago, but they still go out. I will say it's good for information. It's good for an announcement, and to have it in someone's inbox, I don't think is ever a bad idea because they might search it or save it or have it later. But very often, I wouldn't do a story based off a press release. I would often get pitched something like I had shown everyone how to do that, and then say, oh, do you have a press release on this too? And then I would want that information in addition. So it often wasn't the first line for me to say oh, if it's a press release, I'll just, do it. But that said, some print outlets do take press releases and turn them into articles. So, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing to do. You might as well do it. It might not be as effective as you think. It can be one part of a bigger thing that you're putting out into the world.
Some questions came in about bouncing back. So you said no, missed the opportunity, or it didn't go well when you did something with the media. Is there anything you might do to redeem yourself with that outlet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's recognition. I mean, I've had that happen to me. I had an expert who was terrific. I mean, his videos were great. He was great when I pre-interviewed him. We put him live on the set, clammed up, didn't say a word. I remember I was in the control room and I was like, what is happening? I vetted this so well, so this didn't happen. So it's an embarrassment, obviously, to the person, to the producer, because I went to bat for him. I thought it was going to be good. Obviously he was mortified. It was, very unfortunate. He was there for a short time. And so he never pitched again, but I feel like he could have. Do you know what I mean? It was a human moment. It's something that happens. So, and I've had friends who have had really bad experiences on major TV and they get asked back. I sometimes I do media and it doesn't go the best. It's not the greatest performance of my whole life, but I keep at it and I keep doing it. I think acknowledging it first, is helpful so that the producer knows that that didn't go as well as it could have. And then continue to send them things and new videos. So continue to do this over and over again and show them, hey, I've improved. Hey, I'm able to do this now. Here, check out this video I did, or check out that.
Mhm. And several people asked about clothing, backgrounds, and other things about making it go well. If you find on the Authors Guild site, Media Training Part 1, Paula gave fantastic advice on all those little details, hair, makeup, all of that.
Yes.
What about getting to the level where you're a regular paid commentator as a gig? What does it take to get to that level?
I mean, media doesn't pay very much to contributors, and they try not to pay people. They try to, because all the experts are there because you're promoting your book, and that is enough, and that is exciting to everybody enough. In the 20 years that I was in TV news, I remember paying 2 contributors. That's it. So it is a very, very small amount of people who get to do that. And it takes a long time to get to that point. One was a natural medicine expert. I mentioned I love natural medicine. He was terrific. He came back again and again. He always pitched great stories. He was like one of the family. He became part of our team. And he became a paid contributor. But that did not happen very often. And it does take a long time to get to that point. That was also cable news. In local news, I doubt there's ever any paid contributor. Very, very rarely, very few. So I wouldn't go in with like, oh, I'm going to make money off the media. You have to, really think about, what is this doing for you in other ways?
Okay. All right. Well, this has been great. This is a lot to take in. We have links from Paula for more information. And again, the first video she did was on giving interviews, producing video content. The second one, we brought in some authors and they talked about readings, book launches, and all kinds of public speaking gigs. So check those out for more information as well. But Paula Rizzo, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And thanks to the audience for being here.